Joe Biden gives the State of the Union speech last night, and we will talk just a bit about what happened through it, what some of the things meant that came out of the speech, and where we go from there. And by the way, I'm going to give some commentary off of the articles tonight instead of just reading from the articles and talking about that. And because we did sit and watch it live on this channel, and some of my takeaways, I know I asked Katie about a lot of hers, but I didn't talk much about mine, so we'll rectify that and see what we are going with that. So stick around for that and we'll see what's happening there. Hecklers at the State of the Union come by and turn, according to Time, the whole speech into a Biden 2024 ad, which I'm going to be completely honest, it was anyway, but we'll talk just a bit about that and what's happening there. George Santos is expected to sit in front of an ethics panel and talk about how he lied to get into Congress after Mitt Romney, by the way, gave him a stern talking to on the House floor during the State of the Union speech. And a federal judge argues that abortion could be legal by looking into the 13th Amendment, the amendment that bars slavery. It is going to be all this and more. I got more votes than Kevin McCarthy. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. You guys probably got a little bit of background noise in there. I realized when I was first getting started, I still had the microphone on. So those of you listening on the replay while we were going into the intro and I was checking the monitors, we'll probably get a little bit of a show coming up with that. But we'll talk about that more on another time after I get roundly mocked for doing so. But over here on Contemporary, we've got a lot to go over here. A lot of what we're going to talk about is going to be the State of the Union. I know that we spent 2 hours listening to the State of the Union and the rebuttal yesterday, but I've got some commentary after I've had some time to let it digest, and especially now that it's like not going on, because Kate and I were both at the end of the show we were done, we were bombed, we were completely out at the end of everything, because we both had to work in the morning. We'd both been up since early the other morning, and now that I've sat and thought about it and had a little bit of a palate cleanser with work as well coming up with this, now I think I can talk about it a little bit more clearly and some of the things that I took out of it. Yeah, and yes, that even does include our massive internet drop. I hope to God we don't have one of those tonight. That was actually a bit embarrassing to have in such a important stream, but we're here, we're ready to go, so we'll get into that. We'll also be talking about how the State of the Union affected the stock market. That's going to be one of the big ones, and it does look like it's all in the red today too, so we'll go over that and some financial news and the State of the Union over here on Contemporary. Before we get started, make sure you guys go check out great programming such as the Daily Ignoramus, The Breakdown with Breckenhoff, the R-Rated Conservative, the Porch Boys. Go check out Tweets by Britt, Mr. Behavior, the No Gimmicks Podcast, and more as we come together to bring you news and culture from the common man for the common man. That is right. For too long, we have got our news and culture from people who wear suits that cost more than our houses, who've never had to make some of the same decisions we have. So, rather than listen to Anderson Cooper tell you what you're supposed to think about the State of the Union, because it's what he wants you to believe because Democrats are in charge and that means that he has a job forever. In reality, come back and listen to somebody who's maybe had to miss a bill every once in a while, or somebody who struggles to go find affordable housing no matter what age he gets to, or somebody who's lost a job, somebody who's had to make some of those same decisions that you in the middle and working class have to. And it's not just me. Look at all the people that we have coming up here, regular working class people. I mean, Brady over at No Gimmicks Podcast, he's a musician, but he's not a big star, millions of dollars, billions of dollars musician. He is a guy who decided he wanted to make music for a living and drive Uber while he's off tour season to make sure that he can pay for the house. So go check out those great people. They're awesome people. They all come highly recommended from me. And with that, let's get into the news. We will start today, as we always do, looking at the finance. So starting with the Dow. The Dow is at 33,949.01, and a lot of the talk that we have coming from the State of the Union is the fact that the Dow spent the day in the red based on some of the commentary that was made and some of the reveals that were coming, as even CNN fact-checked the State of the Union, but we'll talk a bit about that and what's happening there. 33,949.01 is the current point the Dow is sitting at, without the futures being weighed into. That is 207.68 down, or about 2/3%. So it's not a huge drop, but really honestly, I mean, the stock market this year, and I would say arguably since probably right around Labor Day, has not been able to find its ground. It's not dumping, it's not rising, it's just sitting there. It's not doing anything. People, they're not ready to go back and sell off their assets because they're not in such dire straits because we're in a recession. They're all losing the houses yet. But what they are sitting at is they don't want to put anything more in right now. That's both the investor class and those of you who are doing so on the 401k. And some of the investor class is holding this back up as people are starting to take money out of their 401ks. So we're in an interesting and precarious time where this could shoot right up or it could dump right out. And we'll see what happens with that and where that goes. Looking in at your Bitcoin, that did come in with a slump, losing $295 and 20 US cents on the day. That is down about 1.25% to 22,950.70. That's another one that can't really find its footing right now. Now we're off the bargain basement price of Bitcoin, the 16,000 that we were seeing just a few short weeks ago. But it brought itself back up above the 20,000 mark, and it just sits there. It doesn't go anywhere. Sometimes it touches 24, sometimes it goes to 23. It never really goes back down to 21 anymore, but it just kind of sits there and never moves. So people are putting in and taking out, but mostly people are sitting, not ready to go back and sell off like they were right before Christmas just yet. Looking at your gas prices, the good news with gas prices is that they're not moving currently. The gas prices are still hanging around where they have been locally. From the Madison area, Quick Trip on the west side is at 306, on the Isthmus at the Amoco is 306, entering the Isthmus is at 309, up on the north side is 310, out to the west side is 306, 310, and the BP leaving town is at 310 as well. So for the most part, where we've been sitting for weeks, everything is just sitting here. Nothing, it's waiting for the other shoe to drop. So we'll see what happens with that. Let's grab one from IBD, and then we will start our talk of the State of the Union, which again, we will be spending the majority of the show with this topic. From Investors Business Daily, market rally falls as Google tumbles rather, but pullback healthy. Disney, Robinhood, lead earnings movers late. From Ed Carson. Dow futures edged higher after hours along with the S&P and the NASDAQ futures, with Disney, Robinhood, and Impinj among notable companies reporting earnings late. The market rally pulled back Wednesday, with Google parent Alphabet big drag following its artificial intelligence event. There's an AI market frenzy with Microsoft touting its chatbot tech Tuesday, while Baidu and Alibaba move ahead on their own chatbot projects. But plenty of stocks gave up ground, especially techs. Still, the market uptrend looks healthy, with the major indices all having an inside day, trading within Tuesday's range. Dow giant Walt Disney and Robinhood reported late Wednesday, so did chipmakers Impinj, Monolithic Power, and Axcelis Technologies and semiconductor equipment maker Advanced Energy Industries, human resources software maker Ceridian, HCM, and Buy Now Pay Later leader Affirm Holdings also had quarterly results. Disney and Ceridian were big earnings winners, while Robinhood, Impinj, and Monolithic Power also rose. Axcelis Technology fell while Affirm plunged. AbbVie, Hilton Worldwide both edged down less than 1%. Axcelis Technologies is on the IBD 50. I want to just talk about the Buy Now Pay Later thing. Affirm Technology. Affirm Holdings rather, because that is going to be a little bit telling on who is buying big ticket items and who isn't, and that's really going to be where the market goes and where the economy goes as well. You're always going to, well, hopefully you're always going to. I can't come out and say you're always going to, because I remember what it was like when I was really, really poor. I'm going to drag that music down just a little bit. Hang on. I like the song, but it's getting just a little bit loud. I remember what it was like to be really, really poor. And I'm not talking like poor like I was before I moved up here. That was just a little bit of I don't have the standard of living that I was used to. I am talking like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to eat this month, poor. And I remember what that was like. And hopefully none of you have to go through that this time through. Hopefully we're all a little bit older and a little bit more secure, especially those of us who lived through the Great Recession. Some of these Zoomers are screwed because they don't know what it was like. They're going to stay living with mommy and daddy for a considerable amount longer. Although I think the Zoomers that I know are going to be mostly okay. The ones that I know well, and rather, not necessarily the ones that I know, all of them that I know, but the ones that I know well, I think are going to be okay. But it is going to be definitely a hard road for a lot of them out there that didn't have to go through what we went through in 2008. I remember that, and it's scary. But where I'm going with that is Affirm plunged because, what was Affirm? It was buy now, pay later. It was financing if you went out and got something a little bit bigger on like Amazon or online shopping or something. They had Affirm out there you can make, and it wasn't typically big, or maybe it was and I just never looked at big ticket items like that, but you look at a new 32-inch TV for your bedroom because you happen to drop the one from your bedroom. And now you're suddenly looking at, okay, well, let's do we put $500 down for the new Samsung 32-inch smart TV, or do we do it in 8 easy payments of, let's see, what would that be? $250, $125, $75. Do we do it that way? And again, my big point, that's what I've been saying since the economy was dragging down, is as we're talking about layoffs and everything else, it's because people are not buying the... I always use the TV as the example because it seems to be the universal thing that most everybody wants is a new TV, a nice big flat screen TV in their living room to go watch the football game on. That seems to be the almost, and I mean, there are still people out there that don't want one, but that seems to be the almost universal item that brings us all together, whether it be for, like I said, the big game or watching Netflix in bed. I mean, I don't have a regular sized TV out here in the living room at all. You guys can almost see my living room, including the box I had to move to try to find my webcam from last night. But I don't have a regular sized big TV out there. I've got a little one over there with a Roku on it that I got for free when I got my new TV after I dropped the one on my bedroom. But whether it's something like that for watching Netflix on, or whether it's you got the 3 in front of you here to go back and play video games on or broadcast a news show from. But that seems to be the big thing right there, and people aren't going out and doing that even with, well, I think some people are doing upgrades on their computers or buying some new computers as well, but for that it's because the chip shortages have alleviated some and there's stock in there. Plus, of course, they've got to lower the prices to try to get people to buy the stock that they have. Because there came a point whereas unless you were desperately in need because you needed to play video games or you needed your computer for work, there was no buying of that kind of stuff as well. So that's what we see from that. That was a long-winded way to say that people aren't buying crap, but let's look at the futures and let's get into the State of the Union. On the futures, Dow futures rose 0.1 versus fair value. Disney stock is a Dow Jones stock. S&P futures advanced 0.1. And NASDAQ futures climbed 0.15, so it does look like they're coming back up slightly from where we were at before. We'll see what happens there. But do remember that overnight action in Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. So that is where we are at for that. And our next article is technically a finance article, but we will talk about that from CBS. And actually, that's video here. How the State of the Union impacted the stock market. So we'll listen to just a bit of that for a moment, and then we'll go in and talk about my take from this, the fact checkers' takes, and what we can take away from this in the future for the country. Let's listen.
And there you have it, the closing bell from the New York Stock Exchange, a day now after President Biden's State of the Union address.
The Dow Jones ended the day in the red, down a bit more than 200 points. The S&P 500 and NASDAQ also ended the day in the red. Everybody feeling exhausted from Wall Street to Main Street. S&P 500 down roughly 1%. The NASDAQ is down about 1.5%.
So what does this all mean? Dan Geltrude joins us. He's the founder of the accounting firm Geltrude and Company. Dan, we expected sometimes a president's State of the Union address can have an impact on sentiment on Wall Street. Would you attribute today's drop to what Biden said yesterday or something else?
Well, I think it's always a combination of factors. I think if we actually go back just a little bit now to that stunning jobs report from last week, 517,000 jobs added, which
I don't buy that still, by the way. I don't think that there were 517,000 jobs added. Again, unless it's a lot of part-time stuff or a lot of people that were able to pick up something a little more menial but still paying somewhat of the bills that were off all of these massive layoffs that we keep seeing left and right.
No one saw coming, by the way.
Right.
Now, we would say, hey, that's good news. But the other side of that, as it affects the stock market, is the Federal Reserve looks at that and says, you know what? Things are still running hot, which means we have to keep raising interest rates. Now, the stock market doesn't like that. So I think before we even get to the president, we have that looming. Now, if we talk about what the president said in the big picture, at least from what I heard a lot of talk about spending, right? That's not a great sign for the stock market. And I also heard some talk about taxes, specifically related to corporations. Another thing that the stock market generally doesn't react too kindly to. So I think it's a combination of those things of what we're seeing today.
Oh, that makes sense. You listened to the President's State of the Union speech. What really stood out to you, and what implications do you think those messages might have for investors?
Well, here's what's interesting as it pertains to investors. So the president talked about how there's not going to be any cuts to Social Security, and everybody stood up and cheered. Okay, great. Nobody wants to see Social Security being cut. But that also means there's probably not going to be a lot of cutting anywhere in the federal government, right? Because if these types of obligations that the government has, which keep increasing and increasing, are not going to go down. Well, if you're not going to stop spending, that means you're going to have to tax more. And I think that's really problematic. And that, again, that's what really stood out to me more than anything beyond the politics of the speech.
And there's one more data point, Dan. I mean, we do expect there to be another interest rate hike. We heard from the Fed governor, Christopher Waller, who's warning now that they may go higher than expected. What do you make of that? And based on what Mr. Waller is saying, what should we...
All right, that's enough of listening to them. But there are some things to talk about with this, too. And, like he had said, the taxation, that's a huge part of what goes on with this. And the more you tax businesses, the less that they have to put out and hire workers to increase wages, to increase One of the big things that goes with this that nobody thinks about with the job, they think about increased wages, they think about decreased hours perhaps, or things like that. One thing that nobody thinks about is the benefits and the employer contribution, especially when it comes to 401k. And when you're taxing them out of existence, you're taxing the evil billionaire business owner out of existence. You're sitting in a situation where they're not putting in, or not able to put in the same level of contribution to somebody's 401k, which directly goes in, I would say, not 99, but probably 95% of the cases directly goes into the stock market. That's investment dollars that just aren't going there. So there's a lot going on with that, and just the government trying to spend and the inflation. The more the government spends, the more the inflation rate goes. And people keep saying it's the money velocity of people trying to spend and be consumerist like that. That's not it. The more money is out there, the less valuable it becomes, and the Federal Reserve is trying to fix that by keeping you out of the market, which makes you unable to buy the products from the companies that need the investment in, but also makes it harder for you to go back and live your life, and it does lay people off. There are some times where the economists are coming out and saying, yes, we hope to see 10% unemployment because then we can quash inflation right now. And I keep reminding you, 10% unemployment on first-time claims is 30 million people out of work. Not quite that, because it's working adults, not... And the 30 million is total population, but I bet you that's still a good 10 million people out of work, 15 million people out of work. Easy. It might even approach 20 million. That's a lot of people out of work to have to sit back and wonder what's going to happen with their houses, with their kids, with their families, with their car. But those people hate you. This is actually probably one of the few instances where I could say that the people on the screen are not feigning hatred toward the common man. In fact, feigning, maybe even faking some concern for the common man. But that's where we're at for that. Let's grab one from NPR. 5 takeaways from Biden's State of the Union address from Domenico Montanaro. Even before I do the regular NPR taunt like I usually do, I want to talk a bit about what I saw last night. Again, I asked Katie what she saw, but I didn't talk about what I saw myself, because I knew that I had a 2-hour platform to say pretty much whatever I want. So here we are, and I was still paying attention, I was still listening. The headphones never came off, even when we had our crash in internet, which I will be having a conversation with Spectrum tomorrow about that, because we can't keep doing crap like that. Not on big live streams especially. Now, we're at a point where if I drop out for a second or two because of a little bit of a overload or something on that, because I actually do have really high-speed internet where I live. It's a higher bandwidth than what I had in Redacted, where I used to live. But with that being said, yeah, if we overload or something, we can't shut me down for 2, 3, 5, 10 minutes like we had going on last night. But I was still listening to this. And my big thing with that, and we'll be talking about the heckling as well, is this was a campaign ad. And there is no other way to put this. Now, I criticized Trump for doing his campaign-centered States of the Union. In fact, I was very hard on him for the little bit of, and I say a little bit because at the time it did seem like a lot, but now that we saw what Biden does when he gets the stage, yeah, that was a little bit by comparison. It was still way too much, but by comparison, that was just a little bit of a gentle ribbing towards the other party, let's say. But the Biden speech, that was a full-on campaign ad. That was like the House, Kevin McCarthy, I think he needs to be listed for campaign contribution for that one. And I'm dead serious when I say that. Biden spent more time, and I understand that that's a central part of his platform, because it's a central part of why he got elected in the first place, honk honk. a central part of that message, an essential part of why he's there, is literally because he was not Trump. He was the other guy. They could have put a ham sandwich up there. Even with 1% approval rating, with the way the media was hammering, and the fact that they were tanking and destroying the economy, they could have put Kamala up and she could have won. And I'm not saying that lightly, because I know that she got like 1% of the vote. But it is entirely possible that she could have been put up and won that, the way that they were doing things off there. So again, a central part of this campaign is the orange man is bad. I am not the Republican. So why wouldn't he go out and spend exorbitant amounts of the speech saying how bad the Republicans were? Now, we'll be talking about the lies about Social Security, which I've been doing battle on Twitter over every chance that I get, and do remember that I have to do my job now, again. I can't just go back in there and work for 3 hours a day and call the rest of it good, like I used to be able to. But yeah, when I've had a chance, I've brought it up and reminded people that, number one, we don't have that good of economy, and number two, the only actual legislation that has ever seen the light of day about cutting or sunsetting Social Security and Medicare came from one Florida Republican, Rick Scott, and MAGA and the Uniparty came together in a rare show of unity and shut that shit down right now. Because it's not politically advantageous for anybody who's in Congress to come back and mess with that. But yet, and again, I will remind you that this has been an argument since Reagan. This has been something they've been trying to shove down the throats and saying, oh, Republicans just want to get rid of Social Security and Medicare. Oh, if you vote for a Republican, you're going to get rid of Social Security and Medicare. They have been doing that literally for my entire life. I think possibly even before that. I think that might even go back to Nixon, if you want to be completely honest about it. So let's see what NPR has to say over their takeaways from everything. And remember, hit that donate button, because NPR is National Progressive Radio, and they need our money, comrade, to never print reality and tell you what it is that you're supposed to think rather than let you think for yourselves. And I do have some more rebuttals from this, but first we have to come back from our government propaganda, who does function off taxpayer funding. So, NPR, never printing reality, let's see what it is that they have to say. President Biden delivered a State of the Union address Tuesday that the Democrats will likely be thrilled with. Of course they will. It's a free campaign ad. He struck notes of his traditional unity message, pledging to work with the new Republican House leadership and touting his legislative accomplishments in the past year. But Biden also laid out an average Joe America vision for 2024 full of poll-tested middle-of-the-road issues, as well as a healthy dose of left-wing populism. There's no such thing as left-wing populism. Not in this current political environment, anyway. By the way, I could argue that some of Trump's platform was left-wing populism. And he showed a clear contrast between himself and right-wing House Republicans who couldn't help themselves, hectoring Biden repeatedly, despite the newly minted House Speaker Kevin McCarthy explicitly instructing them beforehand not to do so. It is hard to be both confrontational and paint yourself as reasonable, but for many in the middle and center-left, Biden walked that line well. The president didn't call for a whole lot of new policy. What? That's like a third of what he did, was call for Congress to go pass dead-on-arrival legislation. Beyond, for example, ending what he called junk fees in travel, entertainment, and credit cards. Yeah, because that's what we need to talk about right now. It showed that he's gearing up for campaign mode to finish the job, as he said some 12 times in the speech. and that he's likely going to campaign on what he's already done by drawing a big picture distinction between his vision for America and Republicans. So here are your 5 takeaways, courtesy of Government Propaganda NPR. The speech had to make Democrats more comfortable with the idea of Biden as the standard bearer again in 2024. Yeah, good luck with that. Just all the slurring of his words should have put that to bed. Lots of surveys showed Democrats would prefer someone else to run in 24 instead of Biden, mostly because of his age. Well, that and the fact that he's not one of their progressive allies, he is a boring standard-bearer neoliberal. Though no one can definitively point to who the alternative should be, that's because they don't have anybody. Biden is 80 years old and would be the oldest president to run for re-election, and he suffered from a lack of intensity with rank-and-file Democrats. But he showed in the speech that he can ably make and prosecute the case, not just for re-election, but also for democratic values. 2, Biden tried to bait the right, and it worked. Some of what's likely to make Democrats comfortable is the pluck he showed, the willingness and ability to spar with Republicans and depict them as not normal, but extreme. Yes, campaign ad. Just like I said. The best example of this was on Medicare and Social Security. He definitely riled up House Republicans, accusing some of wanting to cut the popular entitlements. He was careful in that section to note that some Republicans want Medicare and Social Security to sunset every 5 years. No, that is one single Republican. One. Not 2, 1. That was something Senator Rick Scott, the former National Republican Senatorial Committee chairman, opened the door to with his Rescue America plan. Democrats have run with it, even though McCarthy has said cuts to Medicare and Social Security are off the table. Biden's accusations enraged House Republicans who saw the charge as false and too far. That's because it's a lie. That's because it's slander. I'm glad to see it, Biden said at the apparent agreement not to cut the programs. I enjoy conversion. It's not a conversion. The exchange took the lid off any comedy that existed earlier in the evening. From then on, Republicans shouted and heckled, with Marjorie Taylor Greene accusing Biden of being a liar. That's because he is, and others yelling out, "It's your fault," when Biden decried fentanyl deaths. Yeah, close the border. Populism and nationalism are in. Dude, okay. We need to stop and slow down right there, because while Biden the standard bearer, Biden the boring neoliberal, is the technical face of the party, if we're going to go with nationalism, with the effect that socialism has on that party, we are going to go down some dark roads that we do not want to go down. David versus Goliath, the Miracle on Ice, Hoosiers, the New York Mets in general. Americans love an underdog story, especially when mixed with a dose of nationalism. That's especially true today with right and left-wing populism, clearly the hot ticket in politics. Both Biden and former President Trump have populism at their core, the little guy versus the people in power. They're modern-day Howard Beals, mad as hell and not going to take it anymore. My economic plan is investing in places and people that have been forgotten, Biden said, with a line that could have easily been said by Trump. But of course, Biden and Trump come at their populism from very different perspectives and with very different ends. Well, yeah, Biden wants his populism to result in white, middle-class people continuing to be on the slave class, depending on the government for everything. And Trump just wants the people to, be able to go to work and come home. And I don't think he gives too much of a damn about them other than that. Biden went over corporate stock buybacks, oil and gas company profits, big pharma, wealthy tax cheats, and billionaires. No billionaire should pay a lower tax rate than a school teacher or a firefighter, the president said. They probably don't. That's the problem. You're measuring wealth against income. And a lot of these guys have very low incomes, holding what they do have as far as wealth and tangible assets that increase in value. It was a hefty dose of left-wing populism with policies that are actually quite popular. He even made news saying that he's going to require all construction materials used in federal infrastructure projects to be made in America. Which is, unfortunately, and I do agree with the idea of doing that, but that is, number one, that was a Trump proposal. That went over very well. But number two, and I said the same thing at the time, when you do something like that, as much as it does help out on the middle class, it changes around in national debt and taxes, because we've got to pay for that on a no-bid contract that the American company can charge whatever the hell they want for. It's a good idea in theory, but I have yet to see it be able to work in practice. And it is something that I do want to see work in practice. But nobody's been able to do it yet, mostly because, and again, a lot of what's in the government is cronyist and no-bid contracts. Imagine if we had to bid this stuff out, what it would do. There wasn't much about China or Ukraine for that matter. Yeah, no shit. Of course there wasn't. Because you just let a balloon invade our sovereign airspace, fly all the way across the country before you shot it down, and the weapon sales are starting to draw on the people. All the money going over there. Yeah, if I was a speechwriter, I would have left that crap out too. Biden got both parties to stand on police reform and continued to walk a tightrope on police and criminal justice. It's a tough line to walk, but it's one that Biden has continuously tried to. Republicans, like Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who delivered the GOP response, accused Biden of being taken over by a woke mob. After years of Democrat attacks on law enforcement and calls to defund the police, violent criminals roam free while law-abiding families live in fear, she said. Actually, I can't even mock her that way, because she did take a charisma pill somewhere. Like, she found the charisma bobblehead in Arkansas. She didn't get a lot more, but she got a +1. But Biden frames things very differently. It's up to us, man, Biden said while talking about the case of Tyree Nichols, who was beaten during a traffic stop by Memphis police and later died. Nichols' parents were guests of the Bidens. Nichols' mother could at times be seen admonishing GOP members to stand at times. Well, and again, just based on the video that we had from the Tyree Nichols story, that was very uniting to America. And I think that, well, one of the things that goes along with that is I do think that that was not the plan. I think that was supposed to divide Americans more. I think that was supposed to start the racial fight a little bit more. I think that that's what that was planned to do, and it just backfired. And I don't think what happened there was planned, but the release of the video was planned to try to get Americans fighting over law enforcement and etc. Like we did in 2020. I think the point was to have the riots and then have Democrats run back out, or Republicans run out and say, oh yeah, well he should have just stopped and put his hands up. But, you know, everybody who watched that video had said that that was horrific. And notably, by the way, we didn't get the initial traffic stop. We didn't get the initial reaction. We just got the beatdown. We got no other details out of that. But those are their 5 points from this. Let's look at Fox News. President Biden's State of the Union report card ratings from former speechwriters are in. We're going to gloss over this one a little bit and talk a little bit more about some of the more pressing details of this. From Kelly Laco, former top speechwriters rated President Biden on content and delivery of his second State of the Union address, giving out grades ranging from a sterling A to a nearly failing D. I'll give him a C- for that speech. Biden's speech focused on his admin's economic plans, touting his signature infrastructure bill and job growth. He also claimed to want to restore unity and work with Congress in a bipartisan manner. However, Republicans took issue with several parts of his speech, most notably the claim that Republicans aim to cut Medicare and Social Security programs. Let's look at some of the grades. David Wilsall says sleepy address, grade D. State of the Union speeches are almost always boring, but hardly ever has a president said less in more than an hour of speaking than Biden did tonight. While packed with a kitchen sink list of so-called accomplishments that may sell politically, the sleepy address lacked any memorable lines or displays of political courage. Wilsall told Fox News Digital, "Yeah, it was all cheap shots." That's actually a good way to put it. Biden endorsed the exact rote prescription for fixing public education, spending more money in some form or another that has failed American students for decades. If Biden was serious about showing leadership, he would capitalize on growing bipartisan support for school choice instead of regurgitating teachers' unions' talking points, Wilsall said. David Litt, Biden was the adult in the room, grade A. David Litt was the senior speechwriter for former President Obama. So, this is not exactly objective. I doubt the MAGA-eist politicians, many of whom watched at home after losing in the midterm elections. Oh, jeez. Yeah, the editorialization is there in full. We'll find much to like about this speech, but moderate and independent voters were the ones who delivered big wins for Democrats in November. And the State of the Union was for them, Litt told Fox News Digital. Biden earned bipartisan applause for some of his biggest economic and national security accomplishments, like building new roads and bridges and rebuilding the American semiconductor industry to compete with China. But he hasn't done any of that. He used live TV to put congressional Republicans on the spot. No, he used live TV to take cheap shots at them and lie about them. They've now pledged not to cut They did that when Rick Scott. They've now pledged not to cut Medicare or Social Security. They did that while Rick Scott made his dumbass proposal. Oh, the lies. That's all they do here is lie. Last but not least, just weeks after Republicans struggled through a publicly embarrassing, tantrum-filled series of votes for Speaker, Biden was the quintessential adult in the room. He looked presidential. No, he didn't. He made GOP hecklers look foolish start to finish. The commander-in-chief was in command. And then David Litt knelt down right in front of Biden and swallowed what little bit of his wrinkled, glassed flesh there is left. Jonathan Broninsky, going through the motions, C+. Dr. Jonathan Brzezinski, former chief speechwriter for Bill Barr and co-founder of the DC-based public relations firm literary agency Athos, gave Biden a C+, saying his performance was not confidence-inspiring, but it did promote some bipartisan ideas. He said that Biden notably left out his previous references to MAGA Republicans, which he says is proof the president discovered that demonizing half of a citizenry isn't conducive to bring people together. No, but he did take cheap shots at them. He left the word MAGA out of there. But he was still calling anybody who doesn't agree with him an extremist. You lied, Broninsky. Next grade. Rob Noel, formulaic and forgettable, grade C+. He said the right words on bipartisanship, and compared to previous outings, his delivery seemed sincere and energetic. No, it didn't. But the rhetoric was a total rehash. It was flush with familiar platitudes, bottom up, middle out, pay your fair share. Lacked a strong sense of voice. President Obama and Trump gave State of the Union addresses that were unique to them, that only they could have delivered. President Biden's are like a mediocre pop music, sometimes catchy, but mostly formulaic and forgettable. And I'd like to go on and point out another comparison to mediocre pop music, and that's that literally anybody could sing it. You know, you used to get these great songs, these good pop songs that were tailored to the voice of the singer they were intended to, that nobody else could deliver on. But, I mean, what we have now today, you just pump out the next Disney kid and give her or him the song, and they all sound exactly the same. From CNN, fact-checking Biden's State of the Union speech. From CNN staff. Here's a fact check of some of the claims that Biden Republican response by Arkansas Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders. 1. Cutting the deficit. Biden claimed his administration cut the federal deficit by more than $1.7 trillion. Biden boasts leave out important context. It's true the federal deficit fell by $1.7 trillion in the 2021 and 2022 fiscal years, including a record $1.4 trillion drop in 22. But it's highly questionable how much credit Biden deserves for this reduction. Biden did not mention that the primary reason the deficit fell so substantially was that it skyrocketed to a record high under then President Trump because of bipartisan emergency pandemic relief spending. Wow, this is CNN saying that? Then fell as expected when the spending expired as planned. Wow, I can't believe that CNN just called that out. Small business applications. Biden touted American small business applications. This is true, about 5.4 million business apps in 2021, the highest number since 2005, the first year for which the federal government released this data for the full year, and about 5.1 million business apps in 22. Not every application turns into a real business, but the number of high-propensity business apps, those deemed to have a high likelihood of turning into a business with a payroll, also hit a record in 21 and saw its second highest total in 2022. I'm going to wait and do what time will tell, because do remember, like, I talked with Katie last night. I'm in the process of filing for 2 LLCs. I'm actually going to file the LLC for Turns Up Pages Productions finally, years later, and then I am going to get the ball rolling for 100 Acres Distillery as well. 100 Acres Distillery and Brewing. Maybe I should call it something else because I clearly can't say that. But it is going to be a long time before I start going payroll on some of this stuff. And I am probably, by the way, still going to be working at my standard job for a long time for either one of those. I'd like to have a payroll. I'd like to buy out the Daily Ignoramus and the Porch Boys and the No Gimmicks podcast. I'd like to buy out all those shows and then get them under payroll so that they can benefit from my lawyer, whoever that winds up being at the time, because my lawyer's retiring, and I'm sad about that, but that they can benefit from my lawyer or the company lawyer. We can fight to get them back out of there, and I promise I'm not going to have as big of a contract as Steven Crowder's or penalize them for getting banned off YouTube. I ain't going to be doing any crap like that, but I'd like to get them some protection if I could. But it is going to be years before I have payroll coming up, especially for the distillery, because it's going to be 20 years before I have whiskey to sell. Let's see. Unemployment among demographic groups. Biden touted low unemployment rates. Backs first, Biden's claims are accurate. Trump with the national debt. Biden criticized the fiscal management of former President Trump's admin. Facts first, Biden's claim is correct. The national debt, now more than $31 trillion, increased by just under $8 trillion during Trump's 4 years in office, in part because of Trump's major tax cuts. No, it's in part because of the major spending from the Pinko Pox. It's important to note, though, that most of the increase in the debt during the Trump era was because of the trillions in emergency Pinko Pox pandemic relief that passed with bipartisan support. The national debt spiked in the first half of 2020 after increasing gradually during Trump's first 3 years in office because of the spending required by safety net programs that were created by previous presidents. A significant amount of spending under any president is the result of decisions made by their predecessors. Manufacturing investments. Biden's prediction about future job creation is obviously beyond the scope of fact check, but his claims about companies having announced $300 billion in manufacturing investments during his presidency is accurate. Yeah, we'll see what happens there. The unemployment rate is at 3.4%, a 50-year low. This is true. But we never look at the labor force participation rate when we look at that. EV tax credits, this claim needs context. Child poverty cut in half. This is true, the child poverty rate was cut nearly in half in 2021, but the expanded child tax credit was a major factor. The enhancement accounted for the bulk of the reduction. Gas prices down since their peak, but still not down to where they were before. And they pointed that out. He didn't mention, however, gas prices are still significantly higher than they were when he took office. Job creation. Biden claimed to have created more jobs in 2 years than any president has ever created in 4 years. Biden's number is technically accurate. The U.S. economy added 12.1 million jobs between Biden's first full month in office, February 2021, and January 2023. I don't know if that's even true, I'm not going to lie. That number is indeed higher than the number of jobs added in any previous 4-year presidential term. However, it's important to note that Biden took office in an unusual pandemic context that makes meaningful comparison to other periods very difficult. Biden on democracy spreading. While touting his efforts to stand up to authoritarian leaders in China and Russia, Biden painted himself as a champion of freedom and inaccurately claimed that democracy was spreading under his watch. This claim is at odds with data from the Freedom House, a leading nonprofit that tracks democracy and human rights around the world. They say that democracy has been in global decline over the past few years. Building EVs, charging stations, this is more of a promise than a fact. Creating 800,000 good-paying manufacturing jobs. Biden's figures are correct, however, the good-paying qualifier is subjective and can't be independently verified for each of those 800,000 plus positions. Biden on burger chain employees being forced to sign non-compete agreements. Biden said 30 million workers had to sign non-compete agreements, illustrating his point with an example of a cashier at a burger place being unable to cross the street to take a similar job at a restaurant that pays more. This is partially true. Millions of rank-and-file employees and independent contractors, in addition to business executives across industries, have signed non-compete agreements. The critics say suppress competition, wages, and entrepreneurship. The FTC in January proposed a rule to ban employers from imposing those agreements on workers and rescind all existing non-compete agreements. But are burger chain workers really subject to these non-compete agreements? It's not likely, not anymore anyway. Yeah, that is something that needs to go down by the wayside. Inflation falling every month, food inflation coming down, but take-home pay is up. Biden's claims are true that inflation has come down, but take-home pay has only recently started to see gains over inflation. Again, don't believe that one. So that's some of their fact check, and this is a lengthy article. But we'll be going over some of the rest of this when it comes to the heckle. Alright, let's grab one from the USA Today. This is an op-ed. This is not necessarily the opinion of the USA Today, Contemporary, Turns of Pages Productions, or your host, Jay Edgar. This is from Rex Hoopke. Dark Brandon shows up at the State of the Union and mops the floor with lost Republicans. For obvious reasons, we will not be staying for too long in this article. President Brandon, at the ripe age of 80, came out with ample vim and vigor in Tuesday night's State of the Union address and proceeded to mop the House floor with the howling, discombobulated remains of the Republican Party. Preaching populism, which I was told was racist, by the way, and leaning hard on his noted skill as the empathizer-in-chief, Biden bounded through a speech that acknowledged the nation's struggles while remaining unerringly optimistic. He went off script regularly, pairing Republican lawmakers who heckled him, at one point backing the whole party into a corner and getting them to swear to protect Medicare. They keep doing this stupid fucking line. Excuse my language. I'm sorry my nieces and nephew are listening at this point. They keep parroting that stupid fucking line. And it's false. It is fake. It is a lie. And it's legitimately the only thing they have right now. Vote for us, otherwise you might lose your Medicare and Social Security. What a load of crap. I've never seen anything like that in a State of the Union address. They ran at him like a pack of lemmings, and with a wink and a grin, he politely directed them to a cliff. They were yelling at him because he was lying about them. They've been swearing because we've been talking about the debt ceiling for 3 weeks. I'm sorry, let me get on my rant for just a second. We have been talking about the debt ceiling for 3 weeks on this program. I know it's bored people because they'd rather talk about the politics and the fireworks than the finance. But we've been talking about the debt ceiling for 3 weeks on this channel. And right from the beginning, Trump, McCarthy, McConnell, for whatever worthless point that is he is at, prominent MAGA Republicans, the populace in general, have all told them there is no interest in cuts to Medicare and Social Security. There has been one senator from Florida who proposed it and was roundly rejected by his minority leader. His name is Rick Scott. Medicare and Social Security cuts are a lie. He didn't direct them to a cliff. Alright, I can't do any more of this one. It's disgusting. Let's do some more State of the Union. As I said, this is probably going to be what we do for the majority of the day here. From the Daily Wire, Biden blames attack on Paul Pelosi and Trump's election fraud claims. Also a lie. President Biden blamed the attack late last year on Rep. Nancy Pelosi's husband, Paul Pelosi, and former President Trump's election fraud claims. The man who allegedly attacked Paul Pelosi, David DePape, is an illegal immigrant who expressed a mix of fringe political views across the political spectrum. Let's just watch it.
The last few years, our democracy has been threatened and attacked, put at risk, put to the test in this very room on January the 6th.
And as usual, when he says our democracy, he means our hegemony.
And then just a few months ago, an unhinged big lie, assailant unleashed a political violence, the home of the then Speaker of the House of Representatives, using the very same language the insurrectionists used as they stalked these halls and chanted on January 6th. Here tonight in this chamber is a man who bears the scars of that brutal attack, but is as tough and as strong, as resilient as they get. My friend Paul Pelosi. Paul, stand up.
Yeah, no, DePape was not some right-wing MAGA person. As much as you need him to be, he was not. He was a moron that couldn't find his left from his right. And by the way, we're going to be signing off from Instagram in just a moment here, so I just see the countdown is starting off, so I'll be putting that down. We'll be putting the phone down and continuing on. And if you are liking what you're seeing, hit the link in the description and come on over and join us on the main channels. Thank you. Have a good night. Another one from NPR. 2 new kids in class share their State of Union first impressions. And if you didn't hit that donate button before, hit it now because, again, NPR needs our money to spread the lies that communism works. Because we can't spread the propaganda without our money, comrades. So hit that donate button. NPR, never printing reality. Let's see what they have to say. They might be new to school, but they have plenty of insight to offer on Joe Biden's State of the Union address, from issues raised to the experience of sitting in the chamber for the first time. Also, by school, we mean Congress. Two first-term House representatives from both sides of the aisle. The first Gen Z Congressman, Maxwell Alejandro Frost of Florida's 10th District, and Mike Lawler from New York's 17th District. The address was widely viewed as Biden was getting ready for another campaign ahead of the 2024 election. But what happens in the House between now and then comes down to those in Congress like Frost and Lawler. Here are their takeaways. Frost, it was surreal. I'm used to being in an apartment listening to, with some friends. The entire thing was surreal, but I will tell you that the House was definitely bumping for the president and in the message that he brought. Lawler tweets out, "Well, I've watched almost every State of the Union for as long as I've been alive, and it was a wonderful experience on a personal level, and certainly professionally to be there. And all the more special, my wife, an immigrant from Moldova who became a citizen 2 years ago, was my guest. So she was able to listen to the President of the United States deliver his State of the Union, which was a series of lies." Let's talk about Kyrsten Sinema, because she made waves throughout the entire thing. From AZ Central, Kyrsten Sinema sits amidst Republicans as Biden shouts out some of her accomplishments. From Tara Kavalar and Ronald J. Hansen. Independent, Kyrsten Sinema listened to President Biden's State of the Union while sitting among her Republican colleagues and moderate Democrat Senator Joe Manchin. Sinema sat next to Mitt Romney in a section that also included Manchin and Murkowski, Todd Young, and Steve Daines. During the primetime televised address to Congress, Biden referred to several legislative achievements throughout his speech that prominently involved Sinema as well as Mark Kelly. For example, Biden mentioned what he called the once-in-a-generation infrastructure law that Sinema helped broker with former Senator Rob Portman. Yeah, and Rob Portman didn't get his job back. "We used to be number one in the world on infrastructure, then we fell to 13th, Biden said. Now we're coming back because you came together to pass the bipartisan infrastructure law. The largest investment in infrastructure since President Eisenhower's interstate highway system. Already we funded over 20,000 projects, including at major airports from Boston to Atlanta to Portland, man, come on." He also cited the bipartisan measures taken after the massacre at a school in Uvalde. Sinema was one of 4 key senators, 2 Democrat and 2 Republican, to help add more scrutiny to gun purchases by young adults and provide more funding and resources for mental health intervention for those deemed a risk to themselves or others. And again, I remind you, with numerous reports of self-harm, with numerous red flags out on him, and being under the FBI's radar, he still went out and bought a gun that was well out of his price range and passed a clean background check somehow while being observed by the FBI. Kelly, a longtime proponent of certain gun restrictions, was involved in shaping the provisions, including in the resulting law. Biden also specifically touted a passage of $35 monthly cap on insulin prices for Medicare recipients, referring to an issue Sinema and Kelly helped shape after undoing the executive order from Trump that did the same thing. Not to be outdone with Sinema, from New York Post, Senator Sinema's yellow dress at the State of the Union draws mockery on Twitter. From Allie Griffin, I'm kind of waiting for the Rageaholic video on this to come out because I think it's coming. I really do. Senator Sinema ignited Twitter over the bright yellow dress she wore at President Biden's State of the Union, with social media users cracking jokes over the flamboyant outfit choice. Sinema's loud dress with giant ruffle sleeves jumped out among a sea of Congress members in black and navy business attire, and many on Twitter said it was an obvious attention-grabbing stunt. Wow, that's everything that Kyrsten Sinema's ever done. You know, when everybody else is out in navy and black, like they said, she comes out in a bright pink shirt and a jeans skirt and gives her thumbs down to the $15 minimum wage mandate. Sinema, let me tell me you're desperate for attention without telling me you're desperate for attention, Twitter user Jason Rector wrote with a screenshot of the C-SPAN broadcast, showing her dress in stark contrast to the dark colors worn by her colleagues. And attention is what this lawmaker got. Why did Sinema wear her Big Bird floaties to the State of the Union? What she expected in a water landing? Roger Zen AF questioned in a tweet. Another tweeter also compared her look to the Sesame Street character. There's some more images of that. No bra also, it looks like. Not sure about the outfit Kyrsten Sinema decided to wear to the State of the Union address. Roshan Rinaldi captioned the photo of Big Bird seated amongst guests in an auditorium. So, a little bit of classless stuff going on there, but, you know, this is really on brand for this particular senator as well. I am willing to bet that she doesn't make it through the next election cycle, and a lot of what she's doing right now is for the book deal. And Wokeness tweets out, Democrats wearing abortion pins tonight instead of the American flag. Moloch is pleased. That's all I have for that. From the Daily Wire. Getting into the boos and laughs. Congress laughs and boos Biden over claims about the oil and gas industry. From Daily Wire News. Biden was both booed and laughed at over remarks that he made the oil and gas industry on Tuesday nights during his State of the Union address. Biden claimed that the industry made record profits during a global energy crisis because they invested too little of that profit to increase domestic production and keep the gas prices down. Instead, they used those record profits to buy back their own stock, rewarding their CEOs and shareholders, he claimed. Corporations ought to do the right thing, man. Come on. In fact, Biden was the one who clamped down on domestic drilling. By canceling drilling leases, he instead lifted energy production sanctions on socialist dictatorships in countries like Venezuela. We're going to need oil and gas for a while, Biden admitted at one point, leading to boos from Democrat members of Congress. Biden was later laughed at by Republicans when he said, we're going to need oil for at least another decade because the U.S. is going to need oil for a lot longer than just another decade. And we've got videos of both incidences. Let's listen.
We're still going to need oil and gas for a while. But guess what? No, we do. But there's so much more to do. We got to finish the job.
All right, there's one, and here's the other.
Well, all the oil refineries anyway, so why should we invest in them? I said, we're going to need oil for at least another decade. And that's going to exceed and beyond that. We're going to need it. Production. If they had, in fact, invested in the production to keep gas prices down, instead,
why would you invest in production? And this is my legitimate question. Why? If you were a business leader, why would you invest in production right now? When almost the first thing that the president said was that he was going to put your industry out of business. It's the same thing with coal. Why would you invest in coal? Why would you try to grow your business or put anything else into it right now? Because you know the government's going to be coming out to come back and try to control that and put that back in the ground. From CNBC, State of the Union brings brief unanimity on Social Security, Medicare. Why the experts say there's still reason to worry. Well, because they need to peddle fear porn to sell more New York Post New York Times subscriptions and Washington Post subscriptions. From Lori Konish. President Brandon used his State of the Union speech on Tuesday to get a rare unanimity among Democrats and Republicans on one key issue, protecting Social Security and Medicare. For now, it seems that though both parties have agreed to leave the programs untouched amid a debt ceiling negotiation. It's not for now. It's always been that way. During the State of the Union, Biden called out some Republicans who want Medicare and Social Security to sunset, a comment that was met with boos from members of the GOP. So folks, we apparently agree. Social Security and Medicare is off the books now, right? Biden said in reference to the debt ceiling negotiations. We've got unanimity. You always have. Biden then took that further to get both parties to square off any cuts to the programs. So tonight, let's all agree, and apparently are, let's stand up for seniors, Biden said. Stand up and show them that we'll not cut Social Security. We'll not cut Medicare, man. It was a brilliant moment, according to Max Richmond, president and CEO of the National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare. Yet everybody in Congress, both sides of the aisle, on their feet agreeing to protect Social Security and Medicare, Richmond said. But it will take more to reassure the advocates for expanding the program who are staunchly opposed to any cuts. Does that mean we don't have anything to worry about? Rickman said. Not by a long shot. And of course, Rickman, being the head of the Society to Preserve Social Security and Medicare, has he's got a specific reason. He's got a personal interest in this because he can go call on donations by yelling, all Republicans want to end Social Security and Medicare. Shaya Kabas, Director of Economic Policy at the Bipartisan Policy Center, said it was disappointing to see a consensus around not changing the programs when they're facing significant financial challenges that urgently need to be addressed. We really need to put our leaders to put everything on the table and not put red lines about what they're refusing to do, Kabas said. Ultimately, any solution is going to take compromise and bipartisanship, he added. Biden's suggestion that Republicans want to sunset Social Security may have drawn jeers from one side of the aisle during Tuesday's speech, but it was based on GOP plans the president has previously mentioned. No, it was not. That is a lie. Rick Scott proposed a Rescue America plan that was called for sunsetting federal programs every 5 years to allow for Congress to revisit them. That would include Social Security and Medicare. Yeah, and he's the only one. Ron Johnson called for renewing the programs every year. In Ron's case, and I don't give Ron Johnson a lot of deference because I can't stand him. He is a disingenuous twit who just goes to wherever the most power is in the Republican Party. But it will give him deference to this. He did not mention Medicare and Social Security by name. Rick Scott did. The Republican Study Budget Committee, which included a host of House GOP leaders, also suggested other changes, raising the retirement ages for both Social Security and Medicare, as well as changing the measurement for annual Social Security cost of living adjustments. None of those plans has been formally introduced as legislation. That is not true. Rick Scott's was formally introduced. And Mitch McConnell kicked it to the curb. Dude, you can't even lie defending Republicans well, CNBC. More recently, former Vice President Mike Pence called for reforming Social Security with the creation of private savings accounts. Yeah, you can't even lie to defend Republicans well. from Time magazine, of all places. I don't use this source very often. How hecklers turned the State of the Union into a Biden 2024 ad. It already was. From Philip Elliott. When a fur coiffed, Marjorie Taylor Greene yelled liar Tuesday night among the loudest in an abrupt chorus of boos. The oldest president to ever deliver a State of the Union didn't miss a beat. He smiled and went far afield from his script as GOP lawmakers tried to reject his claims that Republicans were ready to gut Social Security, these social entitlement programs. Yeah, we heard this speech. In this striking exchange, Biden's ease in handling it in front of an audience of millions illustrated why the Democrat establishment isn't ready yet to toss the 80-year-old standard bearer overboard. Oh, they are. Despite a halting, vamped-up opening to Tuesday's State of the Union, a Super Bowl joke, why President Biden proved himself plenty capable of holding his own when Republican hecklers started to stalk him. In fact, he actually demonstrated how he might be able to troll them into their own self-owned status in real time. Why? By lying about them? Given Biden acrimony, he'll toss back accomplishments. Throw him hostility, he'll offer up hope. So we're going to listen to somebody else fellate Biden. Biden baited Greene's fellow Republicans into pledges of fealty to Social Security. They, again with this lie. This has already been, this is not a thing. Time Magazine, CNBC, CNN, the USA Today, all want you to believe that this is an actual thing. They don't. Democrats and Republicans both steal money from Social Security Fund. They have for as long as there has been a Social Security Fund. The joke. From NBC, Biden calls out Republicans who heckled his State of the Union speech. President Biden on Wednesday called out Republican lawmakers who booed when he accused them of wanting to cut Social Security and Medicare during his State of the Union address. My Republican friends, they seemed shocked when I raised the plans of some of their members and their caucus to cut Social Security, and Marjorie Taylor and others stood up and said, liar, liar. Biden then pointed to a plan, one plan, floated by Rick Scott last year when he chaired the National Republican Senatorial Committee. I got his brochure right here. All federal legislation sunsets every 5 years. If a law is worth keeping, Congress can pass it again. Apparently, there's video surfacing from 2010 of Mike Lee saying this too, but that's also 13 years ago. More fellation of Biden. This is going to be the recurring lie, because this really is all that they have. The numbers, the jobs numbers can be debunked almost instantly. The progress that we've made, the inflation coming down, the fact that gas is still $3 a gallon plus in most places. The Biden accomplishments are there, and all he has to do is come back out and spill out fear porn that all Republicans want to go down Rick Scott's plan, even though they roundly rejected it as it went. I'm going to skip this one. I can't talk about Social Security anymore, and that's all that it is, over and over again. Let's talk instead about George Santos. From USA Today, Mitt Romney calls George Santos a sick puppy after Biden's State of the Union. From Candy Woodall. Mitt Romney at the State of the Union address joined the growing number of Republicans who have said embattled freshman Rep. George Santos shouldn't be in Congress. If he had any shame at all, he wouldn't be there, Romney told reporters after the address. Santos has admitted to embellishing parts of his personal and professional resume, but Romney said that they are lies, not embellishments. To embellish, he said, is to say that you got an A instead of an A-. Lying is saying you graduated from a college you didn't even attend. Santos lied that he graduated from college and was a volleyball star, a Wall Street resume that did not exist, his ancestry, and more. He's facing the most legal scrutiny and at the local and federal levels for his campaign finances. As Romney entered the House chamber Tuesday, he told Santos he didn't belong in Congress. I didn't expect that he'd be standing there in an aisle seat trying to shake hands with every senator and the President of the United States, Romney said to reporters after the State of the Union. Given the investigations facing him, including a House ethics complaint, he should be sitting in the back row and staying quiet instead of parading in front of the President and people coming into the room. Now, given your failure to be the President, your warmonger, and the fact that you were basically white Obama, you shouldn't be entering the room at all. Why are you in politics again? And again, as I've always said, when I talk about whether or not AOC should be in Congress, when I talk about Marjorie Taylor Greene being in Congress, Paul Gosar, and yes, even George Santos. And I do agree that there should be some sort of accountability for especially the nature of his lies. I will point out the fact that if we kick people out of Congress for lying, we wouldn't have a Congress. But it is between him and the people of his district. Not anybody else in this country. Not a washed-up senator from Utah. Not a former bartender who's now in Congress. And not a washed-up House representative who spews toxic opinions on Twitter. I'm talking about you, Joe Walsh. The only people who this is it's between George Santos and his constituents. Nobody else. Nobody else gets a say in this. I'm going to skip this. We watched this whole thing, and all they have is just the one little clip for 45 seconds of Sarah Huckabee Sanders being incredibly uncharismatic. Well, we're done with the stuff about the State of the Union, at least. So let's grab a couple other things, and there's one funny one I want to end on before we do something I'm thankful for. The last one, Jojo from Joy's has to come out and simp for AOC, saying every single word from AOC is absolutely spot on here, 100% correct. I have not pre-listened to this, so I don't know what she's going to say. I listened to some of it, well, I read the subtitles on some of this while I was setting up, but I don't know what she's about to say. But let's listen.
I just want to start off right here at the top here. This isn't even my line of questioning, but I'd like to submit to the record a Washington Post article now warning about Hunter Biden laptop disinformation, the guy who leaked it. Here's the deal. Before I even get into my questions, I think that the story here with the Washington Post reporting is that what they're saying right here, when the New York Post first reported in October 2020 that it had obtained contents of a laptop computer allegedly owned by Joe Biden's son Hunter, there was an immediate roadblock faced by other news outlets that hoped to corroborate reporting, as many did. The newspaper wasn't sharing what it obtained. New York Post had this alleged information and was trying to publish it without any corroboration, without any backup information. They were trying to publish it to Twitter. Twitter did not let them, and now they were upset. I believe that political operatives who sought to inject explosive disinformation with the Washington Post couldn't get away with it.
It was true, though. It was all true.
And now they're livid. And they want the ability to do it again. They want the ability to inject this again. So they've dragged a social media platform here in Congress. They're weaponizing the use of this committee so that they can do it again. a whole hearing about a 24-hour hiccup in a right-wing political operation. That is why we are here right now. And it's just an abuse of public resources, an abuse of public time. We could be talking about healthcare. We could be talking about bringing down the cost of prescription drugs. We could be talking about abortion rights, civil rights, voting rights. But instead, we're talking about Hunter Biden's half-fake laptop story. I mean,
But it was all true, and it's been confirmed by other sources.
this is an embarrassment. But I'll go into it. Ms. Navarro.
Everything she just said there was a lie. The New York Post obtained it. They got the rights because they obtained it to publish it. Nobody else knew about it at the time. Everything that's on the laptop was true and has been confirmed. Everything she just said there was a lie. A flat-out lie. But of course, JoJo from Joy's, who's hiding behind so many filters that her appearance is a lie as well,
I just want to
is coming out and saying that every single word is 100% correct. Some more Santos news. George Santos expected to face Health Ethics Committee probe. Once again, if the standard for Congress is whether or not you've lied, we're going to have a very, very empty Congress. For Manu Raju, New York Republican Rep. George Santos is expected to face an investigation from the House Ethics Committee, a probe that could derail his already imperiled political career, depending on the secretive panel's findings. Speaker McCarthy initially told CNN yes on Tuesday when asked if the embattled freshman is under investigation by the committee, something that even Republicans acknowledge could lead to his expulsion from Congress if the panel turns up serious evidence of wrongdoing. But McCarthy later clarified his remarks and said that he meant that Santos is the subject of an ethics committee complaints. There are questions I expect them to get answered, he said when asked if he's expected the panel to probe Santos. Oh, they're gonna probe Santos. McCarthy has so far not called on Santos to resign, saying previously that he has no authority to call on Santos to resign. Saying previously his fate should be decided by voters. But he's increasingly suggested that the House Ethics probe could change his posture to the freshman, who hails from a swing district that Biden carried by 8 points in 2020. Ethics is moving through, and if ethics finds something, we'll take action, McCarthy told CNN on Tuesday when asked about calls for his resignation. Right now, we're not allowing him to be on committees from the standpoint of the questions that have arisen. Which is fair, by the way. I'm going to come back out and say that that's actually probably fair. Until they figure out what his qualifications are, what he's done, etc., especially since we don't know at this point. While the investigation is going through, that is fair to keep him off committees. But ultimately, it will be between he and the voters. All right, from the Daily Mail. Exclusive, the trash takes itself out. Pedophile Edward Leclerc killed himself in a courtroom by drinking sodium nitrite after jury found him guilty of child sexual assault last year. From Ruth Bashinsky for DailyMail.com. A sex offender who died after downing a cloudy liquid from a water bottle in a Texas courtroom after being found guilty of sexually assaulting a child ingested a lethal amount of sodium nitrite, a medical examiner has found. Leclerc started drinking the liquid after the jury found him guilty on the first count and continued drinking it as the other counts were read on August 11. He collapsed in a cell and died soon after. The Tarrant County Medical Examiner's Office told DailyMail.com on Tuesday that the manner in which Leclerc died was suicide and cause of death was toxic effects of sodium nitrite. Claire has been facing 5 counts of child sexual assault against one victim, accused of raping a girl between 13 and 17, 5 times from 2016 to 2018. First Assistant Attorney Jamie Beck from the Denton County District Attorney's Office said at the time that initially the situation had been normal. But when LeClaire heard that he'd been found guilty on the first count, he grabbed his bottle and chugged the cloudy liquid as he was found guilty on the other 4 counts. Well, good. I normally don't advocate for suicide, but this is the trash taking itself out. And in all honesty, I know why he did it. He was in a situation where he was going to be beaten mercilessly to within inches of his life, but kept alive so it could be healed in the infirmary and beaten again. People like that don't fare well in prison. And I think he knew that was coming, especially given the fact that he's almost 60. It's the coward's way out. I will give him that. It was the coward's way out to do it, but, you know, you did the crime and you were going to wind up dead anyway. I got one from the Daily Wire. De-transitioners medically harmed by gender-affirming care speak in favor of Tennessee ban. From Christina Buttons. There's a big thread that I've queued up on Twitter to go back and read on this, where people are calling de-transitioners parasites and every other name in the book. And one thing that I've noted too, and I saw this a bit, I think it was this morning. I had a bit of insomnia last night. Not like I did sleep last night, but just not very well. And one of the times when I was awake, I found a thread of people just bashing on a Muslim Republican and MAGA Republican congressional hopeful, because when their pet minorities wander off the reservation, they don't get treated very kindly at all. The same with detransitioners. From Christina Buttons. Young adults who firmly identified as transgender are testifying in favor of banning the chemical and surgical treatments for minors that medically harm them. Tennessee lawmakers are closer than ever to banning the practice of child sex change procedures in the state. The bill, SB 0001, which would bar the use of puberty-blocking drugs, cross-sex hormones, and gender-related surgeries on minors statewide, is quickly moving forward through various committees and on its way to becoming a law with the help of testimony from detransitioners. As a detransition adult, I recognize the importance that a civil action laws like this could provide in holding the people accountable who did this to me as a child and prevent other children from being harmed, said Prisha Mosley. Mosley, now 24, recalled being 15 when she was introduced to gender ideology from the transgender community, and 17 when she was prescribed a high dose of testosterone. The following year, Mosley received a double mastectomy, which she described as having her healthy breasts cut off. Mosley said that the myriad psychiatric conditions and trauma from a sexual assault were brushed aside as soon as she uttered the word gender. My therapist even attested that all my problems were caused by being born in the wrong body, said Mosley. That wasn't true, but I was medicalized anyway. Mosley described the zapping pain she feels in her chest where the 2 large scars remain and the side effects from long-term testosterone treatment, including having disproportionately large shoulders which cause her pain, hair loss on her head, unwanted hair growth on her body, a sore throat, and a voice that she can no longer raise, and muscle and joint aches. I decided that I did not want to be a woman before I'd ever gotten to be one, said Mosley. I was a little girl. I will never know what it's fully like. I fully support a bill that protects youth from the undeniable harm caused by so-called gender-affirming care. The State Senate Judiciary Committee, held on Tuesday, only permitted 1 speaker in favor of the bill and 3 against it, each with 3 minutes to speak. Abel Garcia, a detransition man who had flown from Texas to testify, was not given an opportunity to speak, but released a clip of his prepared statement on social media. Looking at today's climate, I'm very worried and concerned because if I, as an adult, was led astray by the medical system and those who were supposed to help me, what hope do children have today, said Garcia, who chemically and recently transitioned as a young adult and now experiences urinary tract problems and genital atrophy as a result of hormone therapy. Those testifying against the bill included a wealth of misinformation on the prepared statement, including the debunked narrative that failing to affirm a child's transgender identity with medical treatment increases the risk of suicide. Studies that claim that trans youths are at elevated risk of suicide are commonly compared with average mentally healthy teenagers, which is deeply misleading. When research compared trans youth with teens suffering from similar mental health problems, there was little difference in suicide rates between the groups. One of the speakers, KTZed, the executive director of the Tennessee chapter of the ACLU, threatened to sue the state if the law succeeded in getting it passed. So, and again, a big part of this is it's the kids. If, let's say, Mosley. What was the first name again? Prisha Mosley. If Prisha Mosley had gone through and done this and made this decision at 24, number one, I don't think she would have made the same decision, just based on the testimony that was there. But if this was brought forward at 24, I don't think she'd be in this situation. I really do think that she would be a normal, healthy girl. But they're doing this and they're coming to kids who are already in a mess of hormones and other problems, trying to figure out who they are, that have no idea how to be an adult. And they're trying to throw these incredibly adult things. And again, at 18, even at 18, I would say it's probably too young to be throwing this stuff, but, you know, we've borne the rights of full citizenry and the militia onto 18-year-olds, so you're on your own at that point. I would still advocate against it, but you're on your own. You're old enough that you can make that decision for yourself. But would so many people still be doing it if they had to wait? And my last point, and again, I'm bringing this to myself as a point, as a person who has transgender friends. But both of the two that I can think of right off the top of the head, and I do think I have some other ones that I can't think of off the top of my head, but the two that I can think of off the top of my head, both transitioned as adults, fully as an adult, went through their entire childhood as transgender. And what I say to that is, if you think that you are transsexual at 12 and it's legitimate, then you will still be transgendered at 18. When there's nothing that anybody else can say about it, it's between you and your doctor. Plain and simple. It's not just gonna, and if it just goes away, which I think is what the lobby fears, if it just goes away, then you weren't really transgender to begin with. So that's my take on that. Alright, and we are out of time, but I want to grab one more here before we go, just because I thought this was funny. How to speak French.
Wait, you're...
Let's see if I can get the reel to start over again.
on. Attends. And. Temps. So much. Temps. Time. Temps. Horsefly. Temps. 10. Temps. Wait, your aunt is spending so much of your time. You have so many horseflies in the tent. Attends, t'attends, t'en as autant de temps dans la tente. Hold on. Attends. Aunt. Temps. So much. Temps. Time. Temps. Horsefly. Temps. 10. Temps. Wait, your aunt is spending so much of your time. You have so many horseflies in the tent. Attends, ta tante, ton a autant de temps dans la tente. Hold on.
I'm sorry, that was funny. It may not have been your cup of tea, but that was funny. I like that. I saw that in the Discord earlier. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. We can't. I don't know if they can play Reels unless they are on Instagram already. So I decided to share that with the rest of you because I can play it because I have Instagram. Which, by the way, there's a beta version. This is just a little bit behind the scenes stuff before we do something I'm thankful for. There is a beta version of Instagram Live on Restream. And I think I can qualify for it. I got to look through my Instagram account to see if I can go. But that will be another place where people can communicate. And then I think another place where we can pull people chatting in the live chat from there. So that may be a plus. At that point on the Instagram, you can also come back and see what's on the screen above me, instead of just seeing, the little bit that's there. So that could be coming up in the near future. The only thing that I do wonder is if it's going to be widescreen, because remember, all Instagram goes in full screen, it goes in tall screen, not widescreen. All right, let's talk about something that restores my faith in humanity, something that I am thankful for, and we will head out of here for the day. So I didn't really think about this a lot, just honestly, but it's getting warmer. I've been searching around a little bit around here, and I do see that there are some good trails out here. There are some places to get some decent exercise. I have been struggling majorly keeping with the diet. I got off of it for a bit when I moved, just because, number one, I wanted to eat up some of the stuff that was in my cabinet, some of the carbs that were in my cabinet, before I tried to move them across the state. But then still, when I got here, because I was still paying rent on both places for 2 full months after I got here. With that in mind, I also fell a little bit off of the diet, just based on the fact that I was so poor. It wasn't a matter of going and getting good quality food, but it was a matter of just getting whatever I could afford. Ramen, mac and cheese, stuff like that, hot dogs, things like that, and hoping for the best. But I got back on it, and there's been some stress of getting back off, but it does look like things are coming back together. Things are coming nicely. I've got a beautiful Parmesan garlic pulled chicken dish in the fridge that I'm going to eat with broccoli, and it's amazing. I really am coming into it. I keep citing the move on this segment, but I really am coming into my own right now in a way that I just couldn't where I was living before. Developing some community, starting to see new things, and just being able to be out there. I always talk about the niceness and the inherent niceness of Wisconsin people. Because even in Kenosha, there was the inherent Midwest niceness, but it's nothing like what it is here. It really isn't, and I'm very, very happy for that. I'm glad I did what I did. I'm glad that I can put some books up behind me. We can talk about that, which I know you can probably see some of those, and I'll probably get some flack for having a Peterson book behind me, especially buying it at 30% off, but, hopefully one day I'll get it signed by the guy, because I do enjoy Peterson's content, even if my friends don't. But with that, we're going to head out of here for the day, so let's get some outro music up and head out. Make like a baby and head out, as they say. So, thank you everybody who came by and chatted in the live chat. And by the way, let's give one more big shout out to KTZed for coming by at the very last minute and helping me out with the State of the Union last night. That was not planned, because I didn't even think to do that. Like, I had said something on Friday, but then okay, the weekend's here, I gotta get some stuff done, and I had to work on Saturday too, so a lot of stuff came up over the weekend, and I didn't think about it. And then just at the last minute, I put a message out to a group chat that Katie and I are both in, and she said, yeah, give me the link and let's get started. So we did that. Thank you so much for that, KTZed, for coming by, helping me out at the last minute like that. We'll be back here tomorrow to talk about something that is not the State of the Union address. Thankfully, we'll be talking about some of the things that we have left over here. We got through a lot of it, but we'll get through some more of that there. Plus, things I like and things that I hate. And by the way, I am filling that up quickly. There's a lot. So we're probably not going to get to a lot of news tomorrow because there's so much things I like and things that I hate. And there's a lot on both sides too. So come back and join me for that. And we will be back here with more news and more headlines tomorrow. Stick around if you're on the Twitch side as we go rating, and we will see you then. And until then, I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.